Hi there, my name is Gena. If you're viewing this, you're likely looking to fill a sales leadership position. Hiring choices can have a pretty big impact on an organization. In fact, the numbers coming out on the significance of hiring well are pretty sobering. If up to 80% of employee churn can be attributed to bad hires, and almost all companies admit to making some bad choices, then we have to ask ourselves how we can improve our odds of finding just the right people. The literature says that gathering qualitative data about the candidate before hiring is key to making much better choices. As a hiring manager, I know just how hard that can be to get, because in the recruiting and interviewing stage, it's hard to really get to know a person. Things like how they'd react in longer-term stressful situations. Do they engage and think strategically, or do they hit overwhelm, or even worse? It's very hard to assess how they approach work in general, with vision and a can-do attitude, or do they drag their heels when the going gets tough, even with 4 days of interviewing? Frankly, the real substance of a person doesn't come to light until you've been working with them for a while, and by then, it can cost you real money and time to market. So I've put together a little something about myself to share with you so that when we do meet, you'll have a pretty good baseline of who I am and what I'm about. That'll give us a chance to really dig into the important stuff, the stuff that you need to know to make a solid hiring decision. Let's get started. To begin with, let's just get the facts and figures out of the way. In other words, is she even qualified for the job? Let's start with the big picture and we can drill down from there. In my career, I've helped the companies I've worked for make significant gains in pipeline and revenue. Let's take a look at some overall company pipeline growth numbers so you can get a sense of what I mean. Here, you can see that in each year that I was responsible in some way for growing pipeline, that growth was consistently around the 50% mark. And as you can imagine, growth like that is easier to do in the first year and gets progressively harder because you have to hit bigger and bigger targets. Probably more interesting to the company, though, is what all that new pipeline actually produces. In other words, revenue. As you can see, those wonderful pipeline numbers correspond almost directly to a growth in revenue for the company, real money that the company put in its pockets. During this time, either my team or I individually was responsible for adding some really great logos to our portfolio, as well as to our pipeline. Many here that you might recognize. Now, let's take a quick high-level peek at what kind of experience I've got. I've enjoyed over a decade in sales, a little over 6 years of which have been in technical sales. I've also had about 15 years of coaching experience and 2 years of direct team management. I've sold a number of things, including commercial open source software, SaaS enterprise software, pro services, and business services. I've sold both to large enterprise as well as the mid-market, direct and through a 2-tier distribution model. And here are my main areas of knowledge. In these jobs, I've had the opportunity to wear many different hats, things like lead gen expert. I've also held a number of various sales positions, and really, whatever's been called for. I've done this both as an individual contributor as well as a leader. And in most of these roles, I've served as a liaison for sales in one form or another. And so you can click a requirements box. Here are the areas that I've sold in or have expertise in. But let's take a gander at some of my actual skill sets. I won't bore you with an extensive list, but here are just a few in overview. Management. I know how to build great teams. Strategy. I know how to break into new markets. Managing projects. I know how to break down a large vision into actionable steps. And managing pipeline. I know how to grow it, raise the quality of it, and mine it. Where I really shine, though, is here. I love developing people. And millennials as a group have certain mindsets which create very specific coaching needs. Things like helping them to establish self-reliance. And really, the core of doing just that lies in guiding people to understand what drives them to do what it is that they do. On top of that, I can help people identify their limited thinking and help them to expand it, which is a must for any goal-oriented job, and really any situation where you want somebody to be in growth mode. Because a person that's growing is a person that's engaged and motivated. My real specialty in this area lies in improving relationships, including conflict resolution and communication. And all these things together really pay off for the company. But what am I really like as a person? You should know that my first loyalty lies with myself. I'm committed to creating a beautiful life, and really every move I make is measured against that bar. I don't believe that this can happen unless I really am who I am and I can make myself whole no matter the situation. So these are the types of things I work on every day for myself. For me, a beautiful life simply won't happen unless I've done the very best for myself and everyone around me. And here are just a few of the operating principles that I live by. Approach is 99% of everything. Now, what do I mean by that? I believe that success has everything to do with setting up the right conditions to thrive at the outset, not just throwing money or talent at a goal. A good example of this is growing a fruit tree. If we focus only on the fruit, in other words, the prize, without care and attention to its roots and soil, the boring stuff, the tree may produce for a season, maybe two, but the fruit will be compromised and the tree itself short-lived. Do everything in beauty. When approaching just about anything in life, the what is easy to buy, things like expertise or resources, but it's the how we do things that's a lot harder to manage. I'm talking here about doing things inclusively or with integrity. Just be real. The answer lies there. Because we're all focused on forward movement and achieving our goals, it can be hard to stop for a moment and get real about what's maybe less than optimal underneath the surface. But if we can't acknowledge what's really going on, we can't improve and grow. This is true in all our endeavors, both personal and business. Now, these are all kind of pie-in-the-sky statements, so let's dig in a bit and get more concrete. We can take a look at it in two parts, one being my personal traits, the other how I approach work, and together this will give you an overall snapshot of what I'm like over a longer period of time. I think we can agree we all want to hire somebody that's generally a capable person and someone who can demonstrate a history of it, not just at work, but in a number of facets of life. At the grades and the test scores, I've taken first place in a handful of music competitions and was a featured soloist not once, but twice with two different Philharmonic orchestras, all at a fairly young age. And with work, I've always gone above and beyond for the task at hand. All that accomplishment is nice, but how do you know that I'll bring the same level of performance for you? You see, I have a high correlation between my strengths and my motivations. Since what I want to do is lined up with what I'm naturally good at, you can be pretty sure that every day I'll bring my best to the job. If you want to dig into these reports, I'll provide a link where you can view them in detail at the end of this presentation. Next, I'll go as far as to say that I'm intelligent and insightful, that I observe things deeply, and I'm a lifelong learner. I'm lucky in that I'm pretty balanced between analytical and creative thinking, and I'm intensely curious about what works and why, even if it is strange or unexpected. We have so much meaningless data all around us, and I like to dig around, just take a look for unlikely patterns that can give us a leg up. Because I read a lot, I also get new ideas to try. But in order to make them useful in any real way, you've got to measure the outcomes and adjust, and sometimes even adjust again until we get things right. If you haven't gleaned this yet, I'm a problem solver, and I'm pretty good at spotting the issues. Here's a little example of what I'm talking about. We were given a company challenge to aggressively grow and expand. My challenge in it was to find a way to grow the company pipeline by 30%. Now, normally companies simply add headcount to make the numbers, but first things first, I decided to begin by optimizing our sales processes. I figured that if those were working at high efficiency, any subsequent hire would give us more bang for the buck. When I was an individual contributor, I'd stumble across a couple of areas where the pipeline was leaking, so I started there. The first order of business was to create cohesion and real communication between the inside and outside reps. This was the first step toward getting everyone fully reaping the benefits that each side had to offer. And working with the account execs, I clarified on what deal attributes would be more likely to be a guaranteed pop and what kinds of information they needed to really develop the deals. This was going to require my people to sell in a more focused and engaged way, so I got them the training they needed and coached them to view the leads with the end in mind. In other words, a closed deal. The result was that my people provided more discovery and they sold higher into the pipeline, positioning the leads before they handed them to the account exec. The reason we did this was that it teed the opportunities up in such a way that the account executives could immediately dig into solving the prospect's business issues. They were able to do this more thoroughly than the competition straight off the bat. They did this with fewer touch points and less lag time between the initial contact and demo. In other words, we cut out all the unnecessary drag in this highly commoditized market. And we all know that if you're trying to sell value, you better get in there quick. In order to ensure that the new pipeline we created was not just more, but also quality, I kept a close eye on not just the sales accepted leads, but also on the sales qualified leads. The result? Instead of growing the overall pipeline by 30 points, we almost doubled our take, coming in at just under 60% growth in pipeline. Next, I'm flexible and I'm balanced in that I can handle a pretty wide range of things, and that makes me pretty versatile. This flexibility has been super useful to me in that it's enabled me to take on a lot of different challenges. For instance, early in my career, I was chosen to handle issues for our company's largest accounts. Once I'd set up a highly functioning inside sales team, I was pulled over to address the loss of our traditional bread and butter business as we transitioned even more deeply into large enterprise plays. I even worked on a really fun project for the music mogul, Quincy Jones. If you're old enough, you might remember the video, We Are the World, back in the 80s. I was hired to pull off a $15 million sequel to that. It was a benefit concert thrown in the streets of Rome for over 500,000 people. With my partner, we were responsible for everything from hiring a core team and pitching the vision of the project to secure donated top-tier services. Things like marketing and advertising from the giant Chiat Day and worldwide live coverage by Yahoo and XM satellite radio. We also secured things like web presence and donation structures and oversaw merchandising, legal, security, talent, and the like. We accomplished all of this in just 3 short months. Hopefully, you're getting a picture of what kind of employee I might be and just a few of the things that I might have to offer. Now let's take a look at how I approach things, what I value, and how that translates into the workplace. First off, I'm a doer. If I can see that something needs doing, I'll do it whether it's part of my official job description or not. You might spot me doing things that seem unnecessary, but it's always to build something constructive. For instance, at one place, I spent a fair amount of time chatting with the developers and product managers, learning not just about the product, but the context in which the product was being used, what challenges these highly technical prospects were facing, and specifically, in technical terms, why we were able to solve their problems in ways that the competition could not. I did this until I could hold up my side of a useful conversation in my prospect's own language. The reason for all this was twofold. First, if my prospect asked me a question, he didn't have to wait for a callback to get an answer, because there's nothing more frustrating than having to do multiple calls to accomplish a simple task. Secondly, because I was well versed in his challenges, I could open possibilities for him and paint a grounded, knowledgeable vision of how we could help, all the while collecting deeper discovery. By the time the SE and the account exec met with the prospect, they had real things to talk about, and the prospect felt truly helped. When I was an inside sales rep, I took it upon myself to learn everything I could from my account execs. I stayed late most nights because I took time out of my workday to sit in on demos. I learned how to pitch, and I spent time asking them about the nuances of their deals. Now, at that time, inside reps didn't close business like they do today, even though it was just a few short years ago. As well, there was no career path for an inside rep at my company to move up. I knew that if I wanted to stay at this company, I'd have to make things happen. So I took the deals that the account exec didn't have time for. I developed them and closed them without even getting paid at first. And essentially, I created a new career path. Eventually, when I was promoted to manage the inside sales team, this paid off handsomely. I knew that if we wanted to retain and grow the best reps in the business, we had to offer a path for them to strive. Those reps on my team have moved on to hold positions as account executives, directors, and even a VP. Without an upward path, we would have missed out on all that great talent. Like in the last examples, you can get that I see the greater possibility both within situations and especially within people. I always gear myself toward their potential. This is especially beneficial with the millennial population. One of their main pain points as a group is lack of development, which is a significant cause for employee churn within their set. If you remember from the overview, I also have 15 years coaching experience, and I've helped a lot of people get on the road to success. While managing my team, I had virtually no turnover, and I believe that this is because I genuinely understand what engages and motivates people. Next, under the topic of how I approach things, is that I'm a global thinker that acts locally. As a person, I tend to see things as an integrated whole. Now let me give you a few concrete examples of this. On a company level, I frequently work across departmental lines to deliver what's needed for the highest customer experience. On a team level, I like to spread the wealth. In other words, if I have, say, a strong presenter, I make sure that the rest of the team learns from that person in order to raise the overall team skill level. As far as sales processes go, I make sure that every step is tightly integrated, especially those that interface outside of sales, like at the front end from marketing or at the closing end into post-sales services. And for the individuals on my team, I make sure to address all aspects of their person, not just the ones directly related to their sales skills. Because no matter how talented a person, if they're holding on to limited beliefs about the company or about their capabilities, they simply won't bring their best. Now, this is an unorthodox one, but it's actually the one that has had the biggest impact on my ability to contribute to company revenue. According to HubSpot, sales-aligned companies simply do better than those that aren't. Now, not all of the companies I've worked for are what would be termed sales-aligned, but here's how I've done my part. As it turns out, my love for making friends in outlying departments falls right in line in support of these HubSpot numbers. Let's take a quick look at some of the integration work that I've done. It's pretty obvious that any work done to bring together sales and marketing is beneficial. But in one case, I worked very closely with the marketing to focus on and target some really big logos. For this particular company, it was necessary because we were selling in an entirely new marketplace called cloud brokerage. We had only one large customer. We had to sell without the aid of any case studies. It wasn't a proven technology, nor had Gartner even made their views known on the subject. So, although at that time it was in the hot new space of cloud, we essentially had nothing to sell with. It was sheerly a C-level vision sale to multi-billion-dollar companies, but we needed to get in front of those CEOs. So we launched a tightly aligned one-to-one marketing and sales initiative to get the jump start we needed. This effort introduced names like Wolters Kluwer, Target, and Schneider Electric into our pipeline. By the time I left, one of those deals had already closed to the tune of over $1 million. We already covered the integration between inside and outside sales in an earlier slide, so we'll move on to the integration I made between sales and pro services. When I was working on a project to address the drop-off in our core bread and butter sales, I was focused solely on developing a mid-market offering, while the rest of the company was headed toward highly customized enterprise platform plays. While one of the largest benefits of our platform is that it's so comprehensive, which gave our customers a great deal of agility, a plus, but mid-market companies rarely have the IT headcount to deal with it, making us then a minus. So I spent a fair amount of time working with pro services to create highly repeatable install and customization packages that just fit right with the majority of our mid-market customers. In just 2 quarters, we recouped about $500,000 in sales that would have been lost if we didn't have that package. Phew, I know that that's a lot to take in, but I hope you've gotten some information and insight that you need to make a solid hiring decision. So what does this mean for you as a company looking to hire a sales leader? With me, you'll get someone who can jump right in, someone who will approach her job fully with thought and attention to what's best for everyone involved. Someone who bridges both the technical and the people skills to create a truly effective team. Someone who doesn't stick with the status quo if improvements can be made. And someone who can dig right in to find the right approach given the bigger picture. If there's only one takeaway from our time together, let it be this. I'm in the business of taking everything that I've been given to give back to my family, my team, my company, and ultimately, humanity. After spending this time together, if you think we'd make a good fit, let's get together and chat. Here's how to get in touch. With questions, you can reach me by email or phone. For a copy of my resume, just click here in the presentation that I sent along with this video. If you'd like to see me in my natural habitat, here are a couple of links to check out. And finally, here's the links to the reports that I mentioned earlier in this talk, as well as the references to the statistics that I shared with you today. Thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it.